Hello everyone and welcome to this video, which is now Reengineering the Chess Classic series. I'm Grandmaster Matthew Sadler. We're continuing to have a look at the games of the great Italian player Sergio Mariotti, the Italian Fury. And this is actually one that got away. It's a game that should have ended in a win, but ended up in a loss against the equally great Larsen. So this is the game Mariotti against Larsen, Milan 1975. I saw the video of Mariotti presenting this game in Italian, and I could sort of still feel the regret that he had about this game that got away. But it's still a pretty cool one, so let's have a look at it. So e4, c5, and then Mariotti's patented wing gambit, b4, c takes b4, and then d4. Yeah, we saw d5 in a previous game. Larsen did something a little bit similar. He went e6, and after a3, then d5, and then e5 from Mariotti. And we'd noted already in a previous game that this is how Mariotti likes to play the wing gambit. So not try for anything super quick, but just take the pawn center. Just be happy for the fact that with the pawn sacrifice, you've managed to really consolidate this pawn on d4. There won't be any pawns undermining this pawn chain, and then just build up, slowly like in a standard French, and try and make use of this pawn for a kingside attack. For example, the fact that a black knight can't come to f6 to help defend the h7 square. I mean, it's a very modern approach in actual fact, because I mentioned before as well that there's plenty of games with the engines where they're very happy to give up a pawn in order to play this sort of structure. And being a pawn down in a French structure where there's a pawn on e5, yeah, I mean, that's pretty normal for engines. A couple of very nice examples in Silicon Road Chess Improvement, in particular one game by Stoveflace against Ethereal is really, really nice. But yeah, this is how Mariotti's playing it. And of course, in the 1970s, yeah, this sort of thing, now we've got examples from engine games and all that. We can look at what the engines are saying for evaluation. Here you just had to believe, basically. So, yeah, pretty impressive. Larsen took on a3 straight away, and Mariotti played the move c3, just showing this pawn chain was what he wanted. Bishop d7 from Larsen. The engines were looking at the move queen a5, slightly disruptive, trying to stop white from taking on a3 because the c3 pawn would be hanging. But yeah, bishop d7 is quite decent. I mean, compared to the previous game against Holm that we saw, Larsen's being very careful about a knight coming into b5. If knight b5, this knight can come to c8, cover everything. You'll be able to drive stuff away, or you'll be able to take the knight with bishop b5 and exchange off some pieces and get going, basically. It's being very careful about a knight coming into b5. And after bishop d3, he plays a6, just to really make it tricky. So knight e2 from Mariotti, and we saw this in the game against Holm as well. This was his favourite setup: bishop d3, knight e2. Not necessarily what the engines 100% wanted, but I am seeing a few games actually with the knight coming to e2 here, and yeah, it's Mariotti's setup. The nice thing about it is that it leaves the f pawn free to advance. So, I mean, if I'm pretty sure that if I played the wing gambit again, I'd be trying out Mariotti's idea and seeing how it goes, because there's some venom behind it, and well, you can see the players that he's playing it against are struggling like crazy. So definitely worth looking at. The next move actually is really nice. Because we've noted before that Mariotti liked to use his rook's pawns, and here it comes, h4. And yeah, you can imagine that the engines approve. Stockfish plays like you give the position after move 7 to Stockfish, and Stockfish is playing just like Mariotti. So Larsen plays an interesting idea here, knight a5. I mean, what Larsen's trying to do, he's seeing that the knight is not going to be safe on f5 or g6 is just going to get hit by white's pawns, and he's not willing to play a move like h5, to try and get some sort of solid square for the knight. Probably considers that weakens the king side too much. So he's actually going to try and bring the knights over here, and you kind of get the feeling that he's in the end probably teeing up to put the king towards the queen side rather than the king side. The engines were looking at stuff like actually playing knight to c8, and then knight to b6, developing like that. Possible too. But I quite like what Larsen does. It kind of makes sense to me. H5 from Mariotti, and this is quite nice. I mean, the whole point is that by grabbing this space on the king side, you're actually making it even more possible to play f4 to f5, because black can't sort of blockade on the light squares so easily. And there's actually a game that ended up being played by the engines that turned out like that. Let me just show you how that went. Knight c8, this was what the engines were looking for. Knight c2, knight b6. f4, bishop e7. And h5, knight c4, and f5. So you grab the space on the king side, stop black from really being able to establish any sort of light square blockade, and then you start hitting the light squares. And this was pretty promising for white. Plenty of counterplay there. So after h4, knight a5, h5, knight ec6 from Larsen. The engine's looking at knight c8 again. Looking to play knight b6 and then into c4 and then b5. Also quite reasonable. But knight ec6, rook b1 from Mariotti. So this knight doesn't have much of a future anymore on a3. It's not going to get into b5. So Mariotti very sensibly is looking to redeploy the knight. But before you play knight c2, he wants to stop knight b3. So b5 played, knight c2, and now maybe a slightly risky move. f6. Not bad necessarily, but definitely risky, because black's moving all the pieces away to the queen side. We've noticed, haven't we, how somehow Mariotti always seems to get his strongest opponents to move their pieces away from their king. And these two knights have gravitated over to the queen side. So doing some kingside play is a little bit frightening. The engine's looking at knight c4, for example, and that looks pretty sensible as well. Bishop e7, and then we'll see, what we want to do. Do we want to put the king on the king side, or do we want to try and consolidate somehow on the queen side? Well, f6 played, and now knight f4, and this is getting quite crucial here. I'll just show you the blunder, actually unpunished, that Larsen made, and then I'll show you what the best move is. So queen e7 was what Larsen played, and it feels very, very odd, really, doesn't it? I mean, it feels weird, that move. But the refutation is not that obvious. I mean, actually, the queen is very short of squares here. Now I can go back to d8. We can go to f7, but it hasn't got much else. And you might want to stop the video here and see whether you can see the tactic that Mariotti actually missed. He pointed it out in his video as well. And that is bishop g6 check. What is the point here? Well, if h takes g6, we just go knight g6, and we're forking these two guys. The queen comes here, we gain another tempo. Queen g8, knight g6, and white's just the exchange up there. A very, very good position, of course. And the key thing is you can't ignore it and play king d8, because now the queen's got no squares, so you just go bishop a3, which is completely winning. Obviously b4, knight takes b4 is carnage. So that would have, that was such a good opportunity to win there. Mariotti got more. It wasn't the end of the game there, but that was a big blunder from Larsen there. I mean, the best move is f takes e5, and here White's replies to go knight g6, which is really nice. It's exploiting the same point that Black's king is not really surrounded by pieces, so things are pretty loose. And bishop g5 check at the very least would win the queen. Bishop a3 check will also probably be very, very strong as well. So yeah, so knight g6, you go rook g8, and then knight takes e5, takes. But yeah, this guy is hanging. We got the d4 square for the knight. It's a very, very murky position indeed. But after queen e7, so Mariotti played queen g4, and now black got the king out of the way. And f takes e5 is threatened, so Mariotti went back to e2. Wasted a little bit of time there. But yeah, here Larsen again. Sometimes Larsen really played, yeah, as if he'd lost all sense of danger somehow. He's such a fantastic player, but also so many ropey games where you think, oh my goodness, wasn't he noticing anything that might happen to him? Because here, I mean, knight c4 was absolutely essential to try and plug the holes on the queen side. But he played f takes e5, and Mariotti needed no invitation here. He went all in with bishop takes b5. A takes b5, queen takes b5, and there's storm clouds brewing on the queen side. So Larsen played the move bishop e8 just to let the queen do a little bit of protecting there. Queen a6 check, king c7. And now, yeah, white's got a number of promising moves. Mariotti played knight b4, which was pretty good. I mean, castles is also very strong indeed. Because black can't actually take this knight because we go bishop f4 check. And if you go e5, just d takes e5, we're threatening e6. King d7, we go knight d4. I mean, we're still threatening e6. We're threatening knight c6 and rook b7. It is absolutely horrible for black. I don't think that black's going to be holding this in a hurry. So that would have been, quite nice and simple. But knight b4 is also very strong indeed. E takes f4 check played, bishop f4, e5 blocking from Larsen. Knight c6, little nice intermezzo here. Bishop c6 played because after knight c6 we've got rook b7 check picking up the queen. And even if black has a rook and a couple of minor pieces for the queen in those sort of positions, I mean it's still going to be very, very unpleasant for him because the king's so weak. So bishop c6 played by Larsen, queen takes a5, king d7, and bishop takes e5. So after all that excitement, white's got two pieces for the pawn, but the black king is very weak. We've got an undeveloped king side here, and well, I mean the king's still got quite a journey before it can escape. So that's what Larsen gets on with. Probably not the best move according to the engines, but the engines think that white is just, more or less, essentially should be winning this, even if it's not 100% easy. So queen a6 was played by Mariotti. Not a bad move, but what the engines really wanted is the move rook h3. Just bring the rook into e3 as quickly as possible and start harassing the king wherever it goes. King and the queen, of course. That would have been very, very nasty indeed. But queen a6, still rather annoying attack on the bishop. Not really clear where that bishop wants to go. Queen d7 was played. And now, yeah, queen e2 was what the engines wanted. They're starting to think actually that the advantage is disappearing. I mean, after this move, they're giving 0.13 here. Only, which is only just a very slight advantage. For my feeling, this is still looking unbelievably strong. I just wouldn't, I wouldn't believe this at all with black that I'm doing all right in any sort of way here. So, the problem with this move h6 is that it's sort of freeing the rook a little bit. So, it's putting pressure on g7, but if this rook escapes, then black's going to be doing all right somehow. That's always the problem. And this was what the engines wanted. Rook g8 takes. We go rook h7. And then you've got various moves just to unpin. I mean, you can just play queen e6 there. And then you're going to, you're going to unpin. Rook b7 was the idea, exploiting the pin, and then bishop f8. And, we're keeping controls of ourselves, and then we're also going to start, having sort of attacks there. For example, you're threatening rook g2. We go rook g6. I'm threatening bishop takes b7 now. Rook b6, rook c8. It looks horrible, but the engines think that you can hold this. Queen e2, and then rook h6, just looking to exchange off rooks, and, well, you can't really abandon the h-file, then these sort of moves are going to get dangerous. Yeah, very hard to spot that this might be all right for black, to be honest. And, Larsen doesn't manage to play it the engine way. He played rook a8, queen e2, very unpleasant threats against the king here, and now Larsen's queen f5, which is a little bit of a loose shot somehow. I mean, you're attacking the rook on b1, but that's not exactly difficult to deal with. And, the queen felt like it was helping somehow. It was defending the bishop on c6 and the pawn on g7. But, of course, what Larsen wants to do, he wants to build some sort of barrier, along the f-file so his king can get safe. But, I don't know, putting the queen in front of the king whilst it moves feels very, very risky. The engine's not at all impressed with queen f5. What they want, they want the black king to move out of the way like that. And they'll be looking to play moves like rook g8 later and just escape. Again, looks totally horrible to me, but the engines think that it's drawable. At least you're seeing lots and lots of draws in the engine games. So after queen f5, castles, and the engines are up at 3.80. They love this now. But it's not obvious somehow. It's not obvious how this should all, happen. But king f7 played, and now rook b6. That's a very good move to start with. Put the pressure on this bishop. The bishop just can't find a good safe spot somehow. So, very, very, very tricky indeed there. Rook c8 played by Larsen. It's a good move. I mean, you keep this bishop as a barrier, stop the rook from coming across. And, the bishop is also dealing with b7 here. And now, this is where Mariotti starts to go wrong somehow. Engines have a couple of interesting ideas. I mean, rook d1 is just a nice move, just preparing to, bring the rook into play like this. And, the engines didn't find anything better than to play g6. But, after rook f3, we're looking very nice here. We've got pressure, all across, and we've got a queen that can, put pressure in multiple ways. It's clear that this is really, quite tricky for black. And on top of that, we've always got, a bishop h8 if ever we need it. So that would have been pretty unpleasant, just bring that rook into there. And somehow, Mariotti didn't quite get hold of this idea of bringing a rook to the third. Slightly surprising because we've seen him go h4 before, and then play the rook over. But I guess simply, he was a bit overwhelmed by the possibilities that white has. Queen a6 would also have been a pretty unpleasant move here. Threatening the rook. Defended by the queen, but it's still nastily hit, and of course threatening rook takes c6 there. And if queen e6, we're going rook e1 again. And you can't discover an attack yet, but when you go rook e3 after, you'll be threatening rook e3 and a discovered attack. Again, really, really unpleasant for black to deal with here. Mariotti played rook a1, which feels quite decent, but somehow it doesn't turn out to be. It doesn't turn out to be that dangerous. That whole attacking maneuver around the side is not as bad for black as you might think. So bishop e7, rook a7, still good. Still good for white, but it's starting to get quite complicated. To resolve it. Rook h8. And now Mariotti made his really big mistake, after which I somehow think the position ends up becoming more difficult for white to play than black. The engine's still giving it approximate equality, maybe slightly better for white, but I think then, you sort of feel that black is going to find it easier because Mariotti played the move h takes g7, and that sort of feels like a good move. What could be wrong with taking a pawn? It's protected and it's on the 7th rank. The only problem is that, after king g8, suddenly the black king has found a safe space, and this pressure along the 7th rank and also along the 6th rank no longer matters. The king is safe. You can't check it from the G file at all. You can't use the 7th rank to do anything in particular. So what you're looking at then is black doing something, and black's got rooks, black's got bishops, and the white king is also there as well, and maybe slightly easier to attack than the black king now. So suddenly the whole complexion of the game has changed, and it's often the sort of thing that can happen in time trouble, that you lose track of what you are actually doing, and you just end up somehow giving the opponent safe squares in something that's always looked like a danger. And the king's looked in danger from all this all the way, and now suddenly it's safe. There was a way to do it, but it's slightly complex. You need to go, instead of takes on g7, bishop d6 to attack the bishop on e7. Bishop d7, blocking that. And now it's a very strong move, which is queen to e5. Threatening queen takes g7 in actual fact. So, that's the great thing, right? Taking with a piece on g7 is definitely what you want to do, much more than take with a pawn. So after gh6, we take, and now the very strong move, rook b7. And what's going to happen here is that black's going to end up, a pawn down in an opposite coloured bishop ending. And the engines were looking at these lines: takes, rook takes, king f6, and the engines were converting this into a win. Not easy, far from trivial, I would say. Especially because there's no passed pawns really. So there's just a rather damaged structure to aim at, but not so easy somehow, not so simple. This would have given white a good safe advantage somehow. But this move queen e5, not obvious to spot. After hg7, king g8, Mariotti played queen a6. Feels a little bit like inertia somehow, keeping on attacking even though the attack is past. And bishop d7 was played by Larsen. Bishop h4 already is interesting already, but bishop d7. And queen a1, Mariotti coming back, defending b1, defending the c3 pawn. But the engines are starting to get a little bit worried with white, and Larsen just starts bringing his pieces into play, and you're sort of looking at the position and saying, okay, well, what do I do with white? Very hard to say, and obviously with little time, it's only going to get more difficult. Rook bb7 played, the rook's on the 7th, but it's not really doing very much, not with the pawn on g7 blocking the attack. Bishop h4, hitting g2, g3, and now a good move from Larsen here. Queen f3, unpleasant anyway, just looking for bishop h3 here, followed by mate. Queen f1 was played by Mariotti, and now rook takes c3, and the game score ends here. I guess that Mariotti maybe lost on time here, but it's all going horribly wrong. Rook a1 is kind of the only move. You can't take on here because of bishop h3. So, rook takes c3, rook a1, and then something like bishop f6, for example. And, it's not going to win immediately, but long term it's going to win. You've got a piece more, and this pawn will go eventually, and that'll only be a pawn for the piece, really. That was a real shame, that game, because Mariotti played really nicely, and playing all over the board and all that, but I think just at the crucial moment somehow just didn't see this idea really or appreciate its strength, of playing the rook to the 3rd rank, and that would have been excellent in a number of places. Still had a chance, quite late on here, even after this move rook a1, not necessarily the best, but could have made some at least given himself very good practical chances. But it was getting it was kind of getting rather difficult somehow. It's just shows the difficulty sometimes of determining the right angle of attack. He needed to go through the king side, and he decided to go through the open files on the queen side, and that just ended up being just a difficult win to spot, probably when you're short of time. And yeah, and Larsen, as so often in his career, plays an awful game, you feel, but with a knack of escaping that he, like many other great, practical players. Tony Miles, English player, really comes to mind with that. Tony could play really, you'd think, awfully, for large periods of the game, and then just suddenly gather himself together when he was given a chance, and then, normally he just ended up grinding you down in 90 painful moves, whilst you were ruining your missed win somehow. It's very dangerous practical player, Larsen. So not surprising to see him, able to come out on top in such a fight. But a real missed opportunity there for Mariotti, who played, beautifully for most part of the game. There we are. Hope you're enjoying that. Still got some very nice games to come. And so do stay tuned and become like me, the greatest non-Italian experts on the great Sergio Mariotti. Do give a like and a subscribe if you're enjoying it, and otherwise hope to see you at the next video. Thanks for watching.